thing we would ask is that when you do, you keep what you're saying fairly short so that other people have time. We will end in an hour, but we will stay on for a few minutes after. So if you wish to stay on and hang on, we will be there too. I need to record this. I am going to record this. Where is my record feature? Goodness.
I'm already recording, Blake.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Already recording.
I can't do it, but I can't do it.
At the end of we record this so that other parents and other providers can benefit from the conversation who might not have been here. However, at the end, we'll turn off the recording. So if there's some comment or question you'd like to ask, you can just let me know in the chat that you want to ask a question in the unrecorded portion. And we are very aware that sometimes can be helpful for parents. But please join the conversation as we go along so that our goal here is to really flush out a good day.
Yes, and the reason we're having this conversation, we don't need to go there for a moment. The reason we are doing this not only is because hopefully it will be a more fun and rich conversation across a broader range and not be too necessarily technical or even challenging, but also because we at Courageous Parents Network, behind everything we do is this goal to help parents feel that they are being the best, giving parents the tools, resources, and reassurance that they are being and can be the best parents they can possibly be for their child. Because that's, at the end of the day, what matters most is feeling like you have been the best parent that you can be. And we believe that our thought is that helping you see all the little ways that a day can become good by hearing from other parents would be helpful to you, and showing and you contributing ways in which you find the good moments to make towards a good day would be helpful for you to share, very validating. Also, we think it would be helpful for providers to see how parents think of what makes for a good day, because it's probably easy, and Jori and Nick don't suffer from this very much themselves, being trained as they are in palliative care, but it is sometimes easy for clinicians to lose sight of what's meaningful to parents as they push on things that they are working on fixing, which may not be necessarily what matters most to parents in that moment. And we want to hear from Jori and Nick about how they help parents, how they invite parents to talk about what is meaningful and what makes for a good day for them. So that is why we are having this conversation, and thank you for being here. All right, we are going to get started with a speed question. I'm going to start with you, Liz. Can you tell us, share in one sentence or two, what makes a good day in your home with Coulson?
Yeah. Is it okay if I just share a little bit about Coulson's diagnosis first? Yeah. So my son Coulson just turned 4, and he has mitochondrial disease, which basically impacts his body's ability to turn food into energy. He's severely impacted, so he's both medically fragile as well as profoundly disabled. So a good day in our house is really a day where he and I have compatible energy so that we can do things together beyond medical intervention.
And then you can give some examples of that in a minute.
Yeah.
Irene and Chris, what makes for a good day in your home with Riley?
A good day for us is an uneventful day. But Irene's gonna give a quick rundown of Riley because she's used to doing this.
So Riley's 14. He has a rare gene mutation, KCTD7. He's one of a handful in the United States and less than 30 in the world with his gene mutation. He was a normal child. We had no idea he was ill until he was 2. And then things started going downhill from then. It started with seizures, and over the years, finally through whole genome sequencing, 6 years after we found out he was ill, we got a diagnosis, and we've been on a 12-year battle. Mm-hmm. And he's the oldest with it.
Wow.
Well,
So this is all uncharted territory now for you and Riley's care team.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to, so coming off of that, something that you said, Liz, can you talk a little more? What do you mean by when your and Colson's energy is in sync? And I asked that if you could elaborate, and part of that is, I think, understanding the language of your child and meeting your child where they are. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I think, one of the headlines is that caregiving for a complex kiddo requires a tremendous amount of mental and physical energy for everybody involved. And that can be really complicated by the nature of the kiddo's specific disease. So in Colson's case, he is 4 and has had a really hard time consolidating sleep since birth. So he kind of does around the clock stretches of 3 to 4 hours and then is up for several hours at a time. So caregiving with him is really a 24/7 endeavor. And that is tough in and of itself. I've done my best to kind of align my schedule as his primary caregiver with his schedule. And when that works, I'm able to, care for him physically. And also I have the energy to do other things with him, like take him on a walk or take him, on an outing with his dad. When he has low, or when I should say, when our energy is incompatible, we're just trying to survive the day. And because he's nonverbal, he is really, really good at communicating with his emotions and his body and his noise. So I know when he's tired, I know when he's at his limit, and I can help translate that for others in his environment. Like when we go to the doctors, I can say, he's having kind of a hard day. Maybe let's skip the height and weight if it's not critical. So I think that was a very roundabout way of just saying energy is the driver of all of the things, both in the way I care for him and in the way I advocate for him with other care providers.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell in the morning, Liz, when you're getting up or when Colson's getting up, what type of day is likely to come?
Yes. Yes. This morning when he was awake from 4:30 to 10:30 a.m., I knew we would be a little bit tired today. Yes, I can tell. And I'm really fortunate in that I've been able to kind of structure my life around kind of worst case scenario, that being mom doesn't have enough energy to do anything but keep Colson stable. So anything beyond that is just a perk.
Mm-hmm. Liz, I'm curious to know, how do you deal with the emotion of that? Like, how do you cope when you wake up and you recognize that no one's had the right amount of sleep, and Colson is going to be probably a little more medically challenged, but how do you find the emotion of that? And then what do you do to try to, we have to let bad days just happen too, mm-hmm. but how do you deal with all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the first few years, I didn't. I was just like a mess. We are really fortunate in that we were able to get some caregiving support when Colson was close to 2 and have had that ever since. So about 20 hours a week, we have a caregiver helping out in the house. And the way I get through those really hard moments is I remind myself that there is a nap somewhere in my future. I will sleep at some point. And I really, it's what they tell mothers of newborns, right? Like, don't expect to get anything done except what you need to do to keep your kid stable. So I hate to say that I've significantly lowered my expectations about what I can accomplish in a day. I have readjusted my expectations about what I can accomplish in a day, and realized that that's ultimately for the best. If I try to pack too much in, I'm just going to feel frustrated. But if I create the appropriate buffers, it feels manageable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that, if you have had a manageable day, that's good for you and that's good for Colson. At which point, that is you have met the expectation for a good day.
Yeah. And some days that looks like having Disney Plus on all day long
Mm-hmm.
for both of us.
Yeah, you heard Disney, didn't you?
And Chris and Irene, how about you? How do you, how does the energy feature and the communication, how you and Riley are communicating and how you take your cue from him and he interacts with you? How does that play into your day?
Of course, he speaks Riley, so we have to, that's a third language of ours that we have to adapt to. And when he wakes up, which is early in the afternoon, you can tell when he wakes up if he's feeling well or not. Throughout the day, if he's kind of just logy and whatnot, he's just kind of having a bad day, or if he's kind of smiling and moving around a lot, he's having a good day. If he's not feeling well, we can tell by his pulse ox and so forth, if by his heart rate and so forth. Fortunately, I'm at work most of the time, so Irene's the one that's with him the most, so she speaks Riley much more than I do, so you can add.
I mean, we just we judge, like when Riley's sitting up and he falls over and we're doing schoolwork via Zoom or FaceTime, we're like, okay, he's done for the day. Like, we can only push him so much and then we're done.
Yeah. And Nick and Jori, how do you learn the language of the child from the parents? How do you do that? We'll start with you, Jori.
Sure. First of all, I just want to say how much I appreciate being a part of this conversation. It's really fun. And I love just hearing about your kiddos. And I think, I feel like from my perspective, the most important thing for me to find out are these details and kind of the words that different parents use to describe how their kid is doing. So maybe that's energy, or maybe that's vocalization, or maybe that's body language, or maybe that's the brightness in their eyes, or maybe it's just a little bit of a more symptom, lesson day. And so I have to find out kind of what that is for each child and each parent. And sometimes, the different caregivers of the child have different perspectives on that. And so just kind of taking time and sort of teasing apart what that means. And I think Liz did such an amazing job of kind of talking about, there's kind of the layer of Coulson, and then there's the layer of her as a parent, and often, understanding how those work together and kind of the importance of how parents and their kids work together is a big part of that for me as well.
Mm-hmm. And Nick, what do you say?
First of all, let me second, I'm just so happy to be here and I really appreciate it. And it is just a joy. Joy is right. And I think that actually speaks to it a little bit for me. I think part of the appeal of this kind of work is that we get to be curious and we get to be open to different ideas and experiences of life in a way that I think is very humbling and edifying. And I think that really informs what helps me start to understand the language of families and understand the language of patients that I'm working with, is approaching this with a really suspension of disbelief and curiosity of knowing that each new room I go into is a different story, is a different culture, is a different understanding of being. And the simplest ways of resetting a conversation in otherwise really medicalized environment are often as simple as, tell me how it's a good day today, or tell me how your son or your daughter lets you know when it's not such a good day. And hearing a little bit about those stories and how we frame that kind of language really gives me an entryway into understanding how to navigate that now and in the future. And I just love all the language metaphors that have already been brought up about this idea of translating and language. And I think that really speaks to the work itself of being able to step back and really discover what it means when a child is actually having a good day and when a child is expressing themselves in different ways.
You know, oh, sorry, Billy.
Well, I was just going to say, both of you, I mean, Liz Colson is 4, you have a team. How many people are on Colson's team?
Short answer, like, I don't know. Like his clinical team, at least 13 different clinics providers. His core team is like me and dad and his Aunt Olivia, who's his caregiver.
And Riley, how many people at Children's Hospital are on Riley's team? I think he said like
Riley's got a dream team of 17 at Boston Children's and two locals.
So you guys, these team, in Colson's case, it's been 4 years. In Riley's case, it's been 18. But you know, or how many years? Sorry.
12.
12 years.
12 years at Children.
It feels like more than that, but yeah, it's 12 years.
So they've really come to know you, and they're knowing you and knowing your child. And that's one of the things that's beautiful about these long-term relationships, especially in palliative care, when you get to meet these families early and travel with them for years. And with that accompanying, there are shifts in baseline. And at CPN, we talk about this idea of baseline. And for children who have progressive conditions, that the baseline moves. And I guess, you know, the baseline's always moving, but sometimes it's moving in one particular direction. And I guess, Nick and Jori, how do you talk about baseline and good days, those two things? Because as the baseline shifts, we still want to find the good days. Jori, because one could look at it as a loss. They're not doing what they used to do anymore. But that's a sad place to hang out. So how do we hang out in another place?
Well, and I guess my initial reaction to that is that we sort of need to hang out in both, because it's both and everything in between. And, you know, I know we sort of are centering ourselves on what makes for a good day, but I think there's also good moments. And even as children, you know, conditions really progress and they get very sick, there still can be good moments. And sometimes that is not even centered kind of in the child's awareness, but it's within the family's awareness of their being together. And so I think I kind of see asking about good days or good moments or meaningful moments or memorable moments, asking for pictures of those moments or to see what that's really like, because I'm not there all the time to see it, and I want to know through the parents' eyes kind of what that looks like. I feel like that also, for me as a physician, kind of opens the door to talk about the hard days and the hard moments, and I really need to know about both, and hopefully over time the evolution of both. Mm-hmm. So does that answer your question, kind of? Maybe not.
Yes, it does, with a lot more meat on it. Nick, is there anything you would add to that?
I just agree that it's, I think we have to really live a little bit sometimes in that gray of what can be good and what can be challenging. I love, Liz, what you said in the beginning about it's not that you're really setting low goals for yourself, it's that you're kind of adjusting to what that day is going to hold as you're taking it in and assessing it with each time. And I think that's how it's important to think about, is what is good about today and what are ways that we can practically reach towards getting towards what that good feeling is. And I love the imagery of being simpatico with each other's energies, because I think that is perhaps a little bit of a way to think things more of what we're going for rather than an idealized specific moment. so to speak.
Yeah, the big picture of it. And Chris and Irene, how, as you've parented, as Riley has grown and developed and become a young adolescent, how has your evolution of a good day changed over time, if at all?
It's narrowed down per se, because now he's not up and running as back when he was able to. So it's all narrowed down, but I mean, cartoons make a great day for him. Or if we go on a trip to nowhere because of COVID, he gets them out, airs them out, and he gets to see different things in the cartoons. We go to Disney now and then, well, quite regularly actually. We go to Maine quite a bit, visit friends up there and family up there. So that's a good day for him. So we treat him like a 14-year-old, even though he can't walk, talk, or all that. We still treat him like a 14-year-old. So you know, we keep him active. We're always on the go. We try to go as much as we can. Go out on the boat in the summertime. Try to get him on a 4-wheeler. Try to get him out in the woods on the 4-wheeler. We just don't. We want quality, not quantity, with him. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
We put the miles on him.
I think that that's great that you guys still get him out and do all of those things. I know when my own son was going through similar things where he was sort of losing the ability to do things, I think sometimes the changes in baseline made me struggle with my expectations of what I wanted to accomplish. And I kept trying to accomplish everything. And like Liz says, sometimes you have to, it's not that you have lesser expectations, but you need to reframe them. And then I got to the point where I was able to think about the fact that it wasn't that I was expecting any less of Ben in the way that I expected of it when he was running around. Even though he couldn't run around anymore, I still expected the same things of him. Like I wanted the same things for him, and I wanted him to try his best. My expectation was that we would always try our best together and he would always try our best. And I think that's what you guys just said, like you keep having those family experiences and you keep putting that, and that's what's defining the good day. Not that he can't do something anymore, but rather that, or that's how I got to a good day. And I think also to Jori and to your point about knowing the child's language and hearing it, I know I felt more confident in my ability to help Ben have a good day when the providers around him, the teachers, the doctors, the therapists, understood the language he was speaking, even though it changed with his baseline.
Kind of back up a little bit with his doctors. Like I said, we have a dream team and they've been with us for so many years that, you know, they're family, and periodically we'll send pictures of our good days or our vacations or whatnot. And Riley's hepatologist, we send him pictures of Riley on roller coasters or things that it just blows his mind. And then when we walk in for his appointment, he's like, oh my gosh, he says, I'm just beside myself to see what he's actually doing. He says, you know, because a lot of my patients are just, you know, homebound and they don't go anywhere. And you're throwing them in everywhere, you know, and they know when they walk into an appointment or into the room that he's having a good day or a bad day, because we've been with him for so long that they're just like a family member, an aunt, an uncle, grandmother, grandfather, however, walking in and saying, oh my gosh, Riley, you don't look good. Something's wrong. And, you know, it's so great to the closeness that they can read into him without even asking us. So.
Yeah. I just want to pause. I've taken off screen share because there are no more slides to look at, but can you all see the people who are talking? Can okay, everybody, okay, good. And if you can't, apparently you can if you put your computer on presenter view, put the Zoom on presenter view, you will be able to see people who are talking. Switching now to this whole notion of being a good parent, Liz, when you've had a good day, do you feel that you have been a good parent? Or put it another way, if it's been a bad day, does it affect how you feel as Colson's mom? And if so, and honestly, how could it be otherwise? Because I know this for myself and parenting my own children. What do you do with that?
A really good question, and it's a really tough question. So I think the short answer is I feel like an awesome parent every day because Colson is here and Colson has a net positive, we're net positive for how his days are. And that's not a place that I arrived at overnight. It is easier to be a parent on a good day. I enjoy parenting more on a good day. And it's easier to maintain a positive attitude on a good day. And that's something that's really important to me. Like, I truly believe that all children, but especially kids who, are really unique in the way they interact with their environments, I truly believe they tune in to the energy around them. So it's really important to us to maintain kind of good, energetic atmosphere in the home. That's hard to do on a hard day. But I think that I have learned over time that no amount of effort on my part, no amount of will change the nature of his fundamental biology. And I've accepted that. And it feels, hard days feel like a small price to pay for the good days and the good moments. I love that Chris and Irene, travel with Riley. And I love, Chris, how you said you put the miles on. Like that's something we really try to do with Colson too. And I think kind of tying back around to the baseline conversation a little bit, something that helps us do that is really understanding, with the support of the palliative care team, where there is flexibility in his care plan. So as Colson's disease has progressed and he's developed more secondary symptoms, we're adding interventions and we're not really taking interventions off. And so that just eats up more and more time in a day. And when it's a hard day, it kind of has a multiplying effect on everything that's hard. So being able to work with the palliative care team to really understand what here must happen no matter what every day, like his medications, versus where could we maybe flex a little bit if we need to, has been really helpful for us. Like we some mornings, if he's not too gunky, we skip cough assist, right? And that's okay. And instead we just snuggle on the couch. And I think when families are facing new diagnoses and new levels of complexity, they want to do it all exactly right. But there's so much gray there, as Nick said, there's so much gray in what exactly right looks like. So being able to suss that out over time with the palliative care team is really valuable and makes the good days better and the hard days better.
I just have to jump in because what you just said about when your child's newly diagnosed, I remember going to the first conference for families of children affected by Tay-Sachs, which is what my daughter had. And there was a presentation on home care. And there was like a long list of all the things that you were going to want to get or do for your child and all the things you were going to have to navigate and negotiate with insurance. And I thought, it was so long. I was like, do I need to suddenly be good at all of that tomorrow in order to be a good parent to Cameron? And it was extremely oppressive and very intimidating. And happily other parents were able to tell me, no, this happens over time. Give yourself time. There's mastery. A lot of this is optional, that was a really important thing for me to hear. Otherwise I was going to have a nervous breakdown before I even left the mark.
Yes. So many options.
I love what you're saying just about, you know, a lot of this is giving yourself permission to opt out of things as a good, you know, I'm the parent, I can say no to this or yes to this today. Chris and Irene, how have your expectations for what you do and don't seek for Riley evolved, and how you think of what your goals are for him and for your goals are for yourselves as his parent? Has it changed?
It's all been gradual, because, you know, it wasn't a flip of a switch. One minute he's healthy, bouncing, running around like a wild man, to where we are now. It was all gradual. It was just step by step. So we kind of got used to, okay, he's hit this milestone-ish. So, you know, we'll work around that. So, you know, it wasn't just all at the same time. So
we've had to overcome and adapt.
Yes. And then, like you folks are saying, is you don't know what there is out there for help or anything like that. I mean, Irene has stumbled on finding help with like care down when we're in Boston, or just different assistance. You know, not that for assistance is the only way I can word it. So, you know, we're going in uncharted territory. So, you know, we always say that, you know, today Riley had a good day, but it's not as good as it was a couple years ago, you know. So I don't know how else to explain it. But like you say, we overcome and adapt.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Resilience. You guys, parents are so incredibly resilient and adaptive. Just because, and they take their cue. We take our cue from our children, right?
yeah. Well, I always have to laugh too. Is our friends? Oh, you know, if you ever want to go out or do something, you guys make it look so easy. Easy. Riley's easy to take care of. Well, yeah, you're on the outside of the box looking in. You know, we're like a duck on water. We're gliding across water nice, but we're paddling like a son of a gun underneath. So, you know, we've had years of experience of doing this. So yeah, it looks great, but nah. But I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I love that metaphor of a duck. So let's talk a little bit, Liz and Chris and Irene, about the intersection of good days and care plans. You guys have talked a little bit about it, but when you meet with your children's, your son's medical team, how are you working that? How are you thinking about good days when you're having those conversations? Liz, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think that we are often working backwards from the stuff that is hard. We have some very kind of pervasive and chronic symptoms that we manage with Coulson, related largely to his motility and digestion, and we kind of start with what's feeling hard and talk about how different adjustments can enable things to be a little bit easier. It's kind of hard to zero, you know, in the appointments with either individual specialists or the palliative care team, it's kind of hard to zero in on like what a full good day looks like. So our temperature check is usually like, overall, is his attitude and demeanor where we expect it to be? He's very sweet natured. He's very easygoing. He's very tender. If that is still his vibe for the most part, we're like, okay, we're good. We're on track. If that is shifted significantly in any ways, we know that something is off and we need to adjust. So it's often a matter of working backwards from the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm. Makes so much sense. Chris and Irene, is that similar for you guys when you go down to your appointments at the hospital?
It is. One thing that we always try to do is we always try to start every visit with any doctor on a positive. With, you know, like a lot of times we program, Riley has a communication device on his iPad, and we might program like what he's been doing for the last 3 months since we've been there. Like, so they can see like he got a new boat or he went to the ice cream truck, like just different things. And it takes like 3 minutes, but he pushes a button and he tells the doctors what he's been doing, and there's a picture that goes with it. So it's kind of like his story of the good things that have happened since they saw him last. So that's what we try to do to start every visit. And then Chris and I usually, we know going into a visit what our hot topics are that we need to talk about. So we just kind of like get to the point and but we do try to start with our good, always start a visit with a good, on a positive note.
I love that.
No, you can't get the iPad.
Nick and Jori, you guys are palliative care pros, so you do not suffer from going down the rabbit hole of technical stuff. But you know, when children are in the hospital, oftentimes there's a problem that is being addressed. What is the intersection for you, and how do you think of that and work with families between the fixing or treating something in the context of the bigger picture and what good means?
It's a great question. I think it's the crux of a lot of what we do and think about. And I do think we're all at risk a little bit in the healthcare system, even as palliative care clinicians, of getting a little too far down rabbit holes sometimes, as you say. And I do think it is important, and we try our very best, is that even in these brief encounters or checking in, I love this framework of taking the temperature a little bit and trying to kind of step back and reset for the moment about how have things been going the last few days, the last few weeks. What are we thinking about right now, and what is a bit of a challenge perhaps to how that underlying feeling or that shift in what the reference point of the baseline is for right now. And I think it's helpful to kind of just not lunge into a scenario and assume what the biggest concerns, worries will be. And then it's important each time to be asking a little bit more about how has it been going lately? What are we hoping for right now, and what are we worried about right now? And what can we do to address those in this particular moment? And it's so helpful sometimes whether we're talking pictures or videos or this idea of, it really does, even in brief encounters, often can give me a little bit of a sense of, this is important. This is where I should be focusing and what I should be thinking about as I walk into this room.
Yeah, the use of pictures is really, it's just a great idea. And I know, Jori, you are doing a research project around this, because clinicians see families and children in the hospital or the doctor's office, which is not where these children are mostly living. Yeah. So a lot is lost when we only see them like that. Jori, do you want to add anything to what Nick said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that everyone said. And I do think that, when parents come into clinic and their child's having a problem or an issue, I do think we often go immediately to trying to solve it. And physicians, our main tool of training is medication. And I'm certainly biased on the, palliative care side of things, but I think more often than not, that is not the answer that's helpful. And the problem in the moment might even just be a need to feel heard that there's a problem. And there may not be a fix in feeling heard. My husband's actually gotten better about saying, don't fix this. I just need you to hear what I'm trying to tell you. Don't get into fix it mode. And so I guess I would just say it's important to remind these clinicians that, really care and want to help, that they can help by not fixing and not using medicine, but thinking creatively about, again, what the good days are, or the good moments, or, what are the symptoms that are most troubling, and kind of what is the outside the box thinking that we might do, like this med's twice a day. Well, could we try it 3 times a day? Or, the feeding is not working and my child's getting uncomfortable. Well, could we change the feeding plan instead of adding a medicine? Just creative thinking. And that comes from really hearing from the parents about the child and specifically what works for them and what doesn't, because I learn new things all the time that I never would have learned in a textbook or, during my medical training. And then Liz made me think of something that I wanted to mention, which specifically about care plans. And that I think hopefully there's more and more movement towards this, but I think often we don't give families enough options. And so to the extent that parents want options, to think, to ask for specifically, like, if I try this and it's not working, what could I do next before I call you? Or, how much could I change this or that without it being worrisome for my son? Just to get kind of a lay of the land a little bit so that parents have more flexibility. Because I think often they know best about what's needed. And so having that flexibility built in as you're making the care plan can be really, I think, often helpful. Sometimes it's overwhelming and it's not helpful, but just to mention that parents can ask for that. And they can also say, when the doctor's in the fix-it mode, actually, I really appreciate you trying to help. And I just needed to be heard. I don't know if I'm ready to make that change yet or whatever else.
Really, thank you for saying that, Jori. It's so true. The empowerment and options, space, time. I want to see if any of the parents who are with us tonight want to unmute themselves and play off of what Liz and Chris and Irene have said about how do they like to, what helps them have a constructive conversation with their child's medical provider or medical team. Chris and Irene like to begin with the positive. For example, are there strategies that others who are here want to share that they've mastered, or are you looking for advice for how to make that work feel a little more positive and constructive? Tips? I think there are other experts in the room. You can unmute yourself.
Well, hi guys. I'm Dave. This is Alden and my wife Laura. We are new to this. This is Alden is a little over 10 months old and he has polymicrogyria. So we're still learning. And I just say to everyone, thank you for sharing. And Chris, Irene, Riley, Liz, especially hearing from you. Just I think, especially in this past year, it's been hard to meet families with children with complex needs, and so it's a lot to learn and take on. It's great to hear from you that have blazed the trail for us and try and learn and take some of it in. So thank you all for sharing.
I'm really just empowered by hearing the other parents talk about kind of knowing their kid and trusting their gut, because I think with this diagnosis, I kind of stopped trusting my gut as a mom. I was like, how do I care for this? And it's just reconnecting, knowing that we know best, right?
Yeah.
Well, going off from that a little bit, we had to transfer from our local-ish in Vermont. We're like a gazillion miles from anything, but because of a gut feeling I had, we transferred to Boston Children's. So follow your gut forever.
Yeah, and we went on a treadmill. I call it a treadmill of testing and whatnot, because Irene wanted to find out exactly what Riley's diagnosis was. And after, I think it was like 3-4 years of numerous blood tests, this, that, the other, I said, let's just throw in the towel, accept Riley for Riley. And Irene says, no, I want to keep going, because what if there's a cure, or what if it's something somebody missed, or it may be still out there, or whatever. And it took a year. Finally, we were in a study at Boston Children's. They took Irene's blood, my blood, and Riley's blood. They more or less did a DNA makeup. It took a year, and that's how we found out. Had we not done that, we still probably would have been on the treadmill to this day. So, and treat your, like I said, the doctors are like family, same as our PAC team. We don't have anything like that here in Vermont, but when we go down to Boston, it's our three wise men. Actually, they're three women, but I call them three wise men because when Riley's inpatient, they come through the door and they know immediately when they walk through that door if we're having a good day or a bad day. And not this year, but last March, Riley was in ICU with pneumonia, and it was difficult. And we were at wit's ends. The doctor was going down their path, and we had the PAC team come in, and because they've known us so much that we had a come to Jesus moment with the doctor. And after the doctor left, they were going down the route we wanted to go because we know Riley, of course. They don't. They're just going down their own path, and the PAC team says, no, you've got to listen to the parents. We know the parents really well, and we know this isn't right. And 3-4 days later, we had a big turnaround, but we had to have that, like I said, come to Jesus moment with all of them. They more or less boil it down to is, if this was your son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, how would you want them to be treated? And that kind of brought it to knocked them down, and thank God for the PAC team.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what the PAC team is, that stands for the Palliative Advanced Care Team. So that's the palliative care team, or Pediatric Advanced Care Team, which is code for palliative care, because some people think people can't handle the word palliative care, but we at Courageous Parents Network are all about palliative care means quality of life. That's all it means. So just get palliative care.
Blythe, may I add to what Chris just shared? One of the kind of mental shifts that was really powerful for me, we were really fortunate that Coulson had a diagnosis at a very young age, didn't have a prognosis, still doesn't, it's all up in the air, but we know that it's progressive and often degenerative. I felt like, because I was his mom, I had to find the solutions, right? Like, I'm a mom, I should know how to fill these gaps. But I'm not a doctor. And the mental shift for me was going from trying to figure out what am I missing, to just being able to go into a room and say, this isn't working. This isn't working. I need another solution, please. And some of it feels so counterintuitive. Like with our son, he cannot even get close to meeting the nutritional requirements his nutritionist wants him to meet. We're feeding him like a third of what they want him to be getting, but that's what works for him. It feels weird to feed your kid way less than the doctors are telling you they should, but it's also the right thing for him. So just being able to say, this isn't working, please help me find another solution was really empowering.
Liz, I'm curious, how did you get to that point? Like, I think I know my own personal, it took me a little while to get the chutzpah to be able to say to a doctor. I remember Ben's ENT saying to me, well, when he has his adenoids out, he won't be able to say L properly. And I was like, well, you know what? Because of his disorder, he's never going to say L properly. So can we move on to what I need to hear about? But it took a lot of courage. So how did you mentally get to that point?
I mentally got to that point because I was reaching the point where I felt my role as his caregiver was unsustainable. Like, I was so close to burnout, and I needed it to be different. I wish I hadn't gotten so close to burnout before pushing harder. I wish I had just been able to say that sooner, but he was failure to thrive. So why would I decrease his calorie, but just approaching burnout and knowing that me as a burnt out mom is not the kind of caregiver I want to be for him.
Or probably helping him have good days.
Exactly.
And Jori, I would ask you or Nick too to say what would you tell that parent that's you know, when palliative care came and they helped me interpret my language, it worked out great. But until I got to that point, it was really hard to have these conversations. So could you give advice to parents who are saying, I need to tell my providers, whether that's doctors or teachers, what's making a good day for my kid, and they're not hearing it? What's the language I can use to help them hear it?
Yeah, I do think, well, hopefully that the culture is changing a little bit, so that it's not as much of a sort of black and white understanding of what the quote unquote right thing to do is or not to do, because it's not black and white. But I think getting a palliative care team involved can be really helpful, because just additional voices making sure they understand your perspective and helping to voice that perspective, kind of as Chris was saying, you know, when the doctors are kind of on their path and they need a little bit of a mental shift, that team just can be an extra source of advocacy for families. I also think, just to say out loud, there's so much that we don't understand and we don't know. And it's just not part of our medical culture that much to say, I don't know. And so I think if you're finding that something's not working for your child, it's probably not a problem with what you're doing or a problem with your child. It's a problem that we just don't know the right answer to. And I do think the buzzword, just to kind of maybe have a useful phrase, I think saying quality of life is sort of a buzzword that that clinicians can understand quickly, and can kind of open the door for having conversations about the gray or the sort of other right pathways that aren't the right pathway, if that makes sense. I don't know if Blythe or other people kind of want to chime in about that. I hope that makes sense. But just encouraging parents to feel empowered that they know what's right for their child, and just because, you know, X% of nutrition or whatever is what's prescribed, that actually may not be what makes a child thrive.
Yeah.
And those can be two very different things. So
I agree. I
also
think
think
finding.
if you, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Irene.
I
And
was just
then
gonna say, the other thing too is, like, if you are having a problem and you're not able to communicate with a doctor, they're not hearing you. Like for us, we can call back our palliative care team or our complex care team or our neurologist who we've worked with for a long time and know us, and ask them to go to bat to help us.
Which happens a lot.
Because some physicians aren't willing to listen to a parent as easily as others are. So if you can bring in that other team, like that you're very comfortable talking to, if you can find a doctor that you're super comfortable talking to, they can help you go to bat against the doctor that is not so willing to shift from their
game
focus.
Nick, before you go, we have a question from Michelle. If you want to unmic yourself and ask the question.
Hello. Thank you so much. So I am a general pediatrician in Springfield, Illinois. I also do palliative care, and I so appreciate everybody sharing their stories. I really think that one of the roles of palliative care, as you guys have alluded to, is improving quality of life, not just for the child, but for the parents as well. And I know that sometimes the burden of having to tell the story over and over and over, or perhaps you go to an outside ER where they may not be as comfortable with medically complex kiddos, can sometimes be a burden. Do any of you have any sort of care plan that you use for that? Or if not, is that something that would be helpful?
So we have an advanced directive for Riley in the state of Vermont and in the state of Massachusetts, because they don't cross lines. So we have to have advanced directives in both. So we kind of have that. And we have a list. So Chris and I both work for the ambulance service locally as a second job for him and my primary when it's not COVID season. But we came up with a sheet that has like Riley's name, date of birth, his medical history, his medications, his emergency contacts, his allergies, his feeding schedule. But our goal for all these years has been to keep it on one sheet of paper. So if somebody is not, if we're not with him, somebody could get this sheet of paper and maybe not know everything about Riley, but have a good idea of what is in Riley's world.
We have one in the car, one in the truck, one in his backpack. We were visiting Irene's grandmother once and he had a spell. The ambulance service showed up. Of course, they didn't know him from Adam. We gave him the paperwork and they're like, wow, this is great. But that's how we like to have all our patients meet us at the door with, is kind of a rundown. So
Janet's seen our paper.
Ever changing.
And I was thinking after this project that Jori's working on, if you've got a recent photo of your child in a happy moment at home, or their child in their favorite chair, like Riley there, or they're in their bedroom, like including that in the pack and saying, this is my child typically. This is them in their quality of life space. That could be really positive, really helpful, illuminating, and fun helpful for the clinician to see.
I always break out the cell phone and bring them up to speed besides Riley's story. So it's good for me to vent with them, but they're family, so they got to deal with it.
Yeah. Nick, I had stopped you. Is there anything? No?
I just love that. I think this idea of kind of working with providers in the hospital and from that aspect is this idea of refreshing that landscape is incredibly helpful, whether it's the utilization of different teams like a palliative care team to help translate your translations or your interpretations of your child to a larger medical setting, or it's this idea of having like kind of a storybook or a face sheet or something that is helpful to kind of summarize. I'm always learning new ways and strategies from families. And just the other day, somebody handed me something that was a new family that I was meeting, and it was their mission statement for their child. And it really like reset the whole team family meeting that was happening in that moment. And I think that's kind of the key to some of this, is how do you help the team step back a little bit from their primary individual specialized discipline sometimes.
Yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to mention is that CPN does have a template. So if there are newer families on and you're looking for a possible tool to adapt or make it your own, it is on the website, for you to use however is helpful. And it does talk, in addition to, the meds and the doctor's names, there is a portion on how does your child best communicate? How do they, how can we relate?
So I just want to say that when we do this again and parents join us again, I hope you will put your camera on with your child, because it's bringing me such joy to see these pictures of the children. It's what fuels us. So, and noises are welcome. I wonder, does anybody else have anything else they want to ask or say about what they have found helpful, or what they're struggling with, or a quirky way that they have found a good moment or a good day that they could share? I will tell you, Liz, I hope you don't mind. I'm about to share something you said with me. Liz shared with me a few weeks ago that a good day for her is when she and Colson make granola. And I will never forget that. And I have grown children now, not including my daughter who died. And I have lots of days where I feel like I'm not having a good day. And if I think about whether I could make a thing like granola or my bed, maybe I would think about this as a good day. And we could all use a dose of that sort of reframing about what it is we're asking of ourselves and what it is we're asking of our days, especially in the time of COVID.
I would also like to encourage everybody to share, and in this goes to the providers that are with us tonight too. Like, what does a good day look like for you when you're meeting with your patients and you're interpreting their family experience and their language, and just share it with us in a comment, in an email, send us a short video, a voicemail. We don't care. Tell us, because the way we make it better for everybody is when we share what we know and we make the next person have that experience too, so then they can know. So put it out there, because the more we talk about it, the more apt it is that everybody's going to have a good day.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I have a question. I am a CNA on a palliative care team. And I guess my question would be, what is something that a CNA can do to help you have a better day? Because I'm hearing from parents, and I'm no doctor or anything like that, but I come in there and I take care of your children, and I just would like to hear what you have to say. Any parents?
So that's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. I've had the experience of CNAs and MAs coming into my son's room and just kind of going through the motions with him without actually trying to get to know him. But when a CNA or an MA comes into the room, and especially if we're inpatient, and says, "Who's this? Tell me a little bit about him." That is so helpful, because then I can say, like, well, by the way, he's blind and nonverbal, and if you're going to be sticking that needle in him, proceed with caution. So I just think just asking, who is this? Tell me about him. Being curious about our kids is so validating for us as parents. So thank you for asking that question. It's great.
And Nick used that word curiosity, and I do think it's pretty much like the key ingredient to all of this is being curious about the child, being curious about the family. Yeah. All right, well, we are at time. We're over time. I want to thank each and every one of our guests, Nick and Jori and Chris and Irene and Liz and Colson, who's in another room, and Riley, who's been very, very patient with his sitting in between his parents. And then all of you who've chosen to join us tonight. Thank you so much. This is like a highlight of our month when we get to do this live thing. We are always looking for suggestions for things you'd like to have live conversations about. So please email us at connect@courageousparentsnetwork.org if you have an idea. And in the meantime, please join. I sent a link to how to join if you're not already a member. Stay healthy, stay well. As Jennifer said, be in touch with us, because the network is as you make it. That is where it comes from, is the wisdom and guidance and insights from all of you. And just have a good night. Have a good Thanksgiving with whoever you're able to be with safely. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you next time. And thank you. I'm now going to end the meeting. Goodbye.